Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio's military show. We do this every first Monday where we get to chat with Mike Guardia. He is an award-winning author, a military historian, a U.S. Army veteran, an educator, and he has done, oh my gosh, I think it's 25 books. Every time he comes on the show, he reminds me and I go, what? How did you do that? He was named Author of the Year in 2021 by the Military Writers Society of America. His latest books to go get: Coyote Recon, The Forgotten Wars of Colonel J.D. Vanderpool, and The Combat Diaries, with true stories from the front lines of World War II. I encourage you to go to his website, MikeGuardia.com. You may have seen him on the History Channel series, I Was There, and I think he's got more coming out on that. And if you follow him on YouTube, you'll see all kinds of cool footage, military and battle footage, and then also his Retro Wave History podcast. So welcome back, Mike. How are you?
Hey, ladies, I'm doing great. Always a pleasure to be on the show.
Hey, it's good to have you back on. We're going to be talking about celebrities who served in the military. And as soon as we started talking about this, we said, well, we've got to bring Steve Schneickert, Hollywood historian, back on this show with you. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well, thank you. Hi, Mike.
Oh.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
So, Steve, have you ever really looked at that part on the Hollywood history side, going, have they served? Or, when you look at, all the careers, because I know you focus on their acting and everything, which is going to be cool because we'll talk with Mike about, okay, this is who served what and where, but do you ever look at the military side of the actors?
Well, sometimes if I'm preparing it that way, looking at their bios, sure.
Well, I think this all started when Nancy and I did one of our Big Daily Blend podcasts that you both are on for today's show. And this is, we do our show every first Monday, like I was saying with Mike, and then it airs on all of our platforms. But then we do our Big Daily Blend, which is always a music and conversation podcast, pop culture, what happened in history. And we air the day show, which is this one too. And we did this, I was going to say a month ago. I don't know, when Lee Marvin was born, we were like, oh, it's Lee Marvin time. And I started talking about Lee Marvin because he was also a friend of artist Ted DeGrazia in Tucson, where we're based out of. And we do a lot on DeGrazia Gallery in the Sun and the artist Ted DeGrazia. And we're like, okay, these two used to drink together in the art studio. Then, Steve, we all looked at Lee Marvin's photo and said, you guys look alike. I'm just saying. Even Mike says so, right?
People have told me that, even way back, even 20, 30 years ago.
Mike, isn't that one of the first things you said about Mike, about Steve, about Lee Marvin? You said he looks like him. He does. You guys look alike, But Lee Marvin, what I really didn't realize how cool this guy was. I mean, I understand in acting, which I know Steve can get into, but I mean, he did so much military-wise. But what really connected me about this with getting Mike to talk about him today is his story, to me, kind of runs parallel lines with J.D. Vanderpool, who is your main, what you wrote his book about his life. It seems that Lee Marvin's beginning of his life, Mike, kind of goes with J.D. Vanderpool, of kind of having this like rough childhood and going out into the woods and kind of, I don't know, hunting and carrying on and surviving, becoming a survivalist, really.
Right. Yeah. It's I've actually noticed that is a common thread with a lot of these latter day heroes, is that, they have some part of their upbringing that is either very traumatic or one that is really geared towards the rough and tumble pioneer stock lifestyle that you really don't see too much of these days. It's they're folks who in many ways learn to live off the land, and they even use their love of the great outdoors as a form of escapism. And that really sets the foundation for what sets them up for military success.
Wow. And Lee Marvin was also injured on duty. I just want to,
He
a
was.
scout. He was a scouts sniper in the Pacific Theater.
Mhm.
So I know he finished the School of Infantry. He was in the United States Marine Corps, but he served in the 4th Marine Division as a scout sniper. So what exactly is a scout sniper? I mean, to me, a sniper means you're going to like be, stealth and get people.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about? Like he was like,
Right.
ooh.
Yeah, so scout snipers, they fall under this blanket organization called STA, Surveillance and Target Acquisition. And basically what a scout sniper does is it combines the stealth of a scout with the deadly marksmanship of a sniper. You'll have these 2-man sniper teams. You'll have a sniper and you'll have a spotter. And they will go out ahead of any formation, or they'll go out to the flanks of any formation. And what they'll do is they will keep eyes on what they call HVTs, high value targets. And they'll set up these very surgical strike operations for people who have been identified by the various levels of intel to have a high yield value if they get taken out. So you'll have these 2-man scout sniper teams who will go out and say, maybe ahead of a big assault, they'll say, okay, well, there's an enemy encampment here. And if you get this one commander or this one officer or this one high value person who's working for the enemy, it's going to have a very good downstream effect for us when we make our main body assault.
So is that, I mean, is that true for like World War I and II, or is that really more like Vietnam?
Well, it's really true no matter what conflict you have snipers in. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be a sniper team that is going to be doing surgical strikes, and if there's not an identifiable HVT, then there's going to be some sniper nests that are going to be set up at various points, and the snipers are just going to start targeting personnel, and particularly high-ranking personnel from an area of both cover and concealment. And the whole idea there is really just to try to disrupt the enemy formation, and also try to stop their advance, because fewer things will stop an enemy advance quicker than a sniper.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, yeah. So that's what Lee Marvin was doing. He was Private Lee Marvin. And so, I mean, he seemed to have quite a good career in World War II, right? Pacific Theater went further than that. And then he participated in 21 Japanese islands landings. And that's when he was wounded in action, June 18th, 1944.
Oh, wow.
So 21 Japanese islands, like, tell us about that. I mean, is that like, that's when the U.S. military goes in, and then you jump off whatever you're jumping off of and go for it? Like 21 times, or is that a name of something that I don't know about? Obviously, I don't know about it at all.
No, well, this was all part of the island hopping campaign in the Pacific. So when he's jumping onto 21 islands, that means there are 21 different assaults on different islands that he's participating in. A lot of times what we found ourselves doing in a lot of the different parts of this island hopping campaign was you would have these cluster of islands. They would be atolls, and you would have to assault one particular island in one archipelago, and then you would have to go to another smaller island that was part of that same larger chain. But for all of those different landings, there were 21 different ones that he did all throughout 1944. And I think the biggest one that he was a part of was the Battle of Saipan. And these were some meat grinder battles where if you survived, you were actually in the minority, because it was when he was at the Battle of Saipan, I think of the company that he was in, I think that company suffered upwards of 80% casualties.
Oh, Wow, that's and so and then he really did he got hit by machine gun fire and hit in the foot by a sniper. But it's from what I'm reading, Wikipedia, thank you. A year of medical treatment in naval hospitals, and then he was giving medical discharge with rank of private first class. And he was rank of a corporal, but he was demoted for troublemaking. What did he do? A naughty boy.
Does that not surprise you?
No, it doesn't really. But that's it. So he was a naughty, he was a troublemaker. But I mean,
Maybe
what is that line on that? Because he's so heavily decorated with Purple Heart, the Navy Commendation Medal, with a V device. What's that mean? See, I don't know what I'm reading at all. Mike, what's a V device?
So if you have a commendation medal with a V device, the V device actually stands for valor. And there are different ways that you can get the V device. Now, sometimes you can get a commendation medal with a V device for valor simply if you participate in a battle. You don't necessarily have to do something that anyone would subjectively call valor. As long as you were present at a battle when it was going on, you can get the V device for valor. That's the standard that the Navy and the Marine Corps applies to it. Other times, the threshold for getting the V device is a lot higher. Like you actually have to have done something and someone has to have witnessed it, where you saved someone's life, or you held off an enemy advance, or you put yourself in the line of fire beyond what was normally expected to you. It's a pretty hard standard to formalize, but essentially the broadest stroke I can paint would probably be is if you did something that was beyond what the normal call of duty would be, but not rising to the level that someone would say is deserving of the Medal of Honor. But what standard do you actually apply to that? If you get a battle with the fog of battle, if you do something that saves somebody's life, you deserve some sort of recognition. And it just becomes a devil of a chore to try to figure out, okay, well, does this person deserve a commendation medal with a V device? Do they deserve a silver star? Do they deserve a bronze star? Or do they deserve the Medal of Honor?
Yeah, exactly. And he's definitely got, he's got the American Campaign Medal, Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, World War II Victory Medal, Presidential Unit Citation, Combat Action Ribbon. He's obviously done it. What's interesting to me about him going into acting is that I wonder, like, when he was a sniper going into focus. And Steve, please comment on this as an actor, and you understand that focus part. But I feel like there's something very tied in, and all the people we're going to talk about on today's show, is that when it's a life and death thing, and yet you're carrying out a mission, not just life or death. Like you've got the worry of, like, I don't want to get shot, I don't want to get killed, but I also want to carry out this mission. So the focus is so intense, and here you are in different lands. Like, I don't know if he went to Japan, but he understood focus from hunting, right? Hunting animals in the Everglades. But I wonder if that, like, is part of, like, it takes the noise out of your head from your past in a way, when you're so focused on what's in front of you. And Steve, I want to go to you on that first. On the theater stage, like, do you think that happens for people when they are on stage as an actor? I know it as a singer, like, you can't be worried about, like, your bills or anything else in your head. Like, okay, did I eat the right amount of this for whatever? I don't know, whatever. You can't hear anything else other than what you're doing on that stage in that moment. So do you think that's part of, like, what made him a good actor, was that focus?
Oh, of course. You need to focus. You need to stay in the moment. You need to be able to listen to the other actors for a proper response. Because when you're acting, you don't want people to see you act.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But focusing, most important. And you also have to be aware, if you're on stage, of the audience, of their reactions. So you could pause. So you don't keep talking. And then they, the audience, if they're laughing or clapping, they miss what you're saying. So it's a good amount of focusing you have to do, being an actor.
In music, you have to be able to read the band, and the band has to read you. Like, it's like a marriage
Well,
where
it's about
just
timing.
it's
about timing.
Timing, and just a look knows, oh yeah, you're supposed to hit this, we're going to this note, we're going to this time change, or with this
But a
chord
good
change.
band leader or a good orchestra leader, they follow you. That's their job, to follow the singer.
So what is, Mike, with that, I mean, doesn't that go the same in regards to going into battle?
Yeah, it does. I mean, because there's a popular mantra for any combat arms unit that says, when you go into battle, you shoot, move, and communicate. And that communication part is probably the most important thing, because, without proper tight communication, things will get lost in the shuffle, and everyone's confused, and combat is confusing enough as it is. So you need tight communication, and you need solid rehearsals in order to put everything into muscle memory and know what to do when everything starts going to hell in a handbasket.
And that can happen on the stage.
Our band broke up on stage, which was really funny, but was. It's funny now. It wasn't when it happened, but it was funny then even.
It's funny.
I mean, it really, seriously, and it was totally a lack of communication between the drummer and our percussionist. Like, those two didn't like each other, I guess.
And you can't have the drummer, percussionist, and the bass player.
Yeah, because you're supposed to. You're supposed to be with the same beat.
A drummer's a percussionist, but we had a timbale and bongos and everything. So percussionist, but
it doesn't sound like they were team players.
No, there was a little. I actually think that the drummer we had at the time was a little racist, and our percussionist is Latino.
Yeah.
It was served in the Marines too. Anyway,
he
was awesome.
Eddie was awesome.
He was a gun sergeant.
Awesome.
Yep. He was an amazing. No one can sing Under the Boardwalk like him.
No, dude, he was awesome.
He was awesome. I mean, there's definitely people out there.
But the other dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Steve, go back to Lee Marvin on this with his acting. Tell us some of the highlights that you think about in his career that we should be looking on, because to me he did quite a bit, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, he really did. A few of my favorites. I really enjoyed him in Cat Ballou, 1965, that he won his Oscar for Best Actor. And then he was also really good, even though the movie wasn't quite so good, was Paint Your Wagon.
Oh.
I love Paint Your Wagon.
And that's I Was Born Under a Wandering Star song.
I know.
There, right?
I love that.
But the movie is so different from the stage musical. Has nothing to do with what Lerner and Lowe actually wrote.
Oh, wow.
But they made it for a star vehicle for Lee Marvin and also for Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed him. One of the first films I saw was The Dirty Dozen with him, which that's a wonderful, wonderful war movie.
Yeah, that's the thing too. He played war movies. And also Attack, wasn't he? He was in Attack. It looks like a military movie. So I wonder what that was like, to go and have the real experience and then go perform it. You know what I mean? That's got to have been kind of interesting to do too.
Well, probably does a better job than someone who's
not done it. Yeah,
maybe not done it.
Yeah, I mean, And
Yeah.
he was also in the Virginian. That's a big deal.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Virginian. And I thought he had an amazing singing voice too, you know, beyond. Come on, I know. I like it, you
Oh, I'm
know.
not
I
cutting him
like
down.
I
He did the best he could. I
Yeah.
have
no,
respect
but
for anyone who could get in front of the camera or up on a stage
Mm,
or behind a microphone.
mm.
No matter how they do, I'm not going to judge them.
no, but I love I was born under a
That's
wandering
what it
star.
is.
And
Yeah, it
that
was
speaks
fun.
to me big time.
Uh-huh.
But what I like about or felt that was really fun about Paint Your Wagon was Clint Eastwood walking about across the grass plains saying, I talked to the trees and there weren't any trees. That was really funny.
Well,
Hey, but
that's why they didn't listen to him.
I
Clint
know because
Eastwood.
I couldn't hear him. He
Well,
wasn't by any trees. It was
I,
so
I,
weird.
but Clint Eastwood also served in the military.
Yep.
Yes,
I
he
didn't know
did.
that. I saw that
Hmm.
this list I was looking at. I didn't know that he served
Hmm.
as well. You
Yeah.
know, and I mean, his movies are all kind of badassy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well,
There's just so
yeah.
many that. Was it really mostly World War II? Do you think, Mike, that we had so many actors stand up and go in because of what was going on, and then obviously Vietnam later? But it seemed that a lot of these actors, it was World War II, and that
Yeah.
they went in.
Hmm.
Yeah, I really think that was a function of the time and also a function of the conflict, because here we had a war that we knew that we were going to be in sooner or later, whether
Hmm.
we liked it or not. And the
Hmm.
fact that we entered uh, as a result of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, yeah, it was a premeditated attack. It was it was to a level, not quite, but it was to a level similar to what we saw in the aftermath of 9/11,
Yeah.
where we had this surge of patriotism. And when we're attacked on our own soil, that galvanizes a big portion of the population. And being that we knew what was happening in Europe and we knew what was at stake if we let the Japanese conquer the Pacific, you had
Hmm.
a wide swath of the population who were able-bodied to say, hey, send me, let's go. And
Yep.
patriotism was much more of a common virtue back then than it is today. And
Hmm.
that's why you saw a lot of, Hollywood screen icons who in many ways saw themselves as role models, say, hey, I feel compelled to set aside my acting career for the benefit of the country and
Hmm.
fulfill my role not only as a role model, but if I'm going to live up to my persona on the silver screen, then I need to put my money where my mouth is, and I need to
Hmm.
go
Yep.
serve my country because I'm an
Absolutely.
American just like everyone else.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you had a lot of very well established actors who ended up serving in the military. And not only that, you had some up and coming actors who served on the front lines in World War II, and then they became big stars after the war.
Hmm.
And there was no, I'll say this, there was no discrimination as to whether or not you were a big star or whether you were a character actor, because a lot of these Hollywood players, they signed up in droves. The biggest one being Clark Gable,
Mhm.
who was the #1 box office star in America at that point. And he actually thought to try to get in because at that point he was considered too old. And
Oh wow, yeah.
yeah, and then
Wow.
also, of course, you had Jimmy Stewart, who was also a
Hmm.
megastar at the
Hmm.
time. And
Mhm.
he not only served with valor, flying combat missions over Europe. He stayed in the Air Force Reserve for a number of years afterwards, and ended up retiring at the rank of brigadier general. To say
Yeah.
nothing of the fact that he also did a few observation missions in Vietnam as well.
Mhm.
So you had guys like that. You also had Eddie Albert, who many of us know from Green Acres. Yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
worked on the front lines. And you also had up and coming. You also had these up and coming character actors at the time. Like Charles Bronson, who really became a
Mm-hmm.
megastar after the war. Yeah,
Huge stuff. But
Yeah.
don't leave out Chris Christopherson.
You can't leave out
I
Nancy's
have
favorite.
to. I have to go there because he did serve in the military. He's from a military family, and he served as a helicopter pilot, and he was a captain.
Yeah. Well, and okay, this is what I want to go back to is the two that two of the actors that were in MASH were
Oh
actually,
yeah.
I mean, they served. Mike Farrell served in the Army for 2 years
Mhm.
during the Korean War time, and also, Alan Alda.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
so much fun.
yeah. And Jamie Farr as well.
Wow, there's 3 then.
Yeah, I wonder if he took his dresses with him.
I know,
Yeah,
that's what I was
I know.
saying, because even
I
when I'm
think
looking at the
that's-
photos,
But I think
yeah,
that's what made MASH so much fun. It's because they had real experience.
yeah, yeah. He and Red Skelton toured with him. Oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Mhm.
Red Skelton. Wow. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I think it's a way of working through it too, like performing it, is a way to work through it. Like, this is what it was like. And like we've talked before, my Korean War is something everyone just always talks about, the Vietnam War versus the Korean War,
right.
So that's it's an interesting thing. MASH, when you watch things like MASH, Mike, do you look at things, are you look at like any war movie and see if it's, correct? Or like,
Yeah.
is it, yeah,
Mhm.
or can you just get into it and go, okay, I'll watch it again and then pick on it?
No, well, the first time I typically see a war picture, I watch it just for the enjoyment. And I usually won't try to put a critical eye towards it until after the credits roll, because, like, I'll enjoy the movie and then I'll say, wow, hey, that was really great. And then I remember this one scene. And then as I'm thinking about that scene, a few hours after the movie's over, I'll be like, you know what? That really would not have gone over well if that had happened in real life, because in my experience, I know this, this, and this. And, one of the films that actually caught myself doing that to, and it's funny because I had grown up on this film. It was Red Dawn. And like I had seen that movie at least a dozen times as a kid and always loved it, and it's still one of my all-time favorite war pictures. But then I think about 2.5 years into my active duty tour, I watched it again. I watched the first one, and then I saw that god-awful remake. and and after I had that little mini movie marathon of watching both of those back to back, side by side, I was like, yeah, that point where they tried to ambush the Russians, I noticed that there was no search and demo team. I noticed that there wasn't this. I was like, they didn't have proper flank security. I mean, it was after the credits had rolled, I was like, man, there were so many things that that I knew to be part and parcel to an ambush operation that they just did not have. But yeah, it's always funny. And a lot of us in the veterans community have actually commented on this. It's like, you never look at these war pictures the same way after you've served, because, you can like make an entire drinking game out of, trying to find like all the little tactical mistakes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, but
And that's
why it's
also Hollywood
Yeah, it's
using their theatrical license
yeah,
of
it's
changing
called
things,
that's
to
what they call
sensationalize
acting.
things.
Yeah, they call it acting, and they make it for acting and being on screen.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, the result is you have to market what you just produced. And
Mhm.
so things are changed to be able to more market what you just produced.
But
And,
I,
you can't be 100% accurate because you weren't there and you really
you
don't
can't
know.
anyway, because of time
Yeah.
constraints. don't allow, and that doesn't allow it. Like even in writing a book, you're gonna have to chop out half the babies.
Well,
You know?
and
Well,
because
Mike
of
knows that.
marketability is how you going to disperse
Yeah.
what you just
Mhm.
produced, whether it's a book or a play or a
Yeah.
movie.
But I
And
get
you
it. I
have,
mean, but
you have to
it's kind of good for
somehow,
both sides. I think it's good for both sides because
mm,
for you guys who
it
have been in the
produces
service,
interest.
yeah, you guys get to see it in two different ways. Like we wouldn't know what to look for, but when I see people do movies like on South Africa, I am
Oh
called
gosh,
BS.
we're like, oh,
Like when they put Winnie Mandela as the sweetest person, like no,
oh
let me
no,
call
we're just
BS on
like, are
that.
you kidding me?
She did this, this,
And
this. We watched it, but so I want to
but
go. Steve, we were talking about Clark Gable, Jimmy Stewart, Eddie Albert, all these, amazing people. But I find that Clark Gable's kind of interesting. Do you think because it was also didn't he lose his love at that time and then kind of
Right, Carol Lombard, 1942, coming back from spilling war bombs. The plane flew
oh,
into a mountain in Nevada. And so it took
wow.
everybody on board, including 22 Army people that were coming into Nevada for training. But it killed Carol, her mom, and her press agent.
Oh,
And that devastated him.
yeah.
And that's when he decided he wanted to go in, even though he was 43 years old.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So
As Mike had stated earlier.
That because I know
Basically, it
that
was school.
when we lived in outside in 29 Palms outside Joshua Tree, we'd go up to Vegas to print our magazine way back in the ancient times of magazine printing. And Good Springs, Nevada. It's kind of on the border. It's kind of near, like you got Prim, and then where you can see the Bonnie and Clyde car. That's all shot up. It's kind of cool.
Yeah,
But Good Springs,
different.
Nevada, there's this little saloon, and they used to hang out there. Carol Lombard and him a lot. Well, through the Southwest. He was all over the place. But the two of them, Oatman, Arizona. But Good Springs, was a bit. I wonder if how close that airplane was to there, where they went down, because but I know it's so close to LA too. But do you think, that didn't he also play in war movies?
Yes.
As well. Okay.
I'll let Mike take over that.
Yeah. Oh, the war movies. Yeah. Have you watched any of that, Mike? Have you watched any of
which
Clark
one
Gable's? Have you? Well, I don't know. There's a lot that he's done. Clark Gable. Have you watched any Clark Gable movies?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen Gone with the Wind, and
Oh yeah, that's a war movie. Big one. Huh?
Yeah, Civil War. You bet.
And Mogamba was pretty good.
Ah.
And one that one that I really wanted to see but have not seen yet is Soldier of Fortune, because that I think is probably one of the good war film tropes to come out of Hollywood during the mid-50s, and it is on my bucket list, but I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen that either.
Me neither.
That I can recall.
Yeah. Wow. So what about Ronald Reagan?
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ronald,
that's a big deal.
Yeah. So at the time, Ronald Reagan was actually an Army reservist. He had been a reservist since I think it was right before he actually made it as a Hollywood player. So he entered into the Army Reserves in April of 1937, and that was right around the time that he signed his contract with Warner Brothers. And throughout most of the late 30s and early 40s, he was on the rise as he had some leading roles in some of the B movie pictures and supporting roles in the A's. And, right around the time when he was starting to reach what I think would be Hollywood star status, with Newt Rockney and Kings Row, that's when he got called up as a reservist for a stint as an active duty officer. But the thing that kept him from going overseas was his myopia. And there's this popular urban legend out there, which may be true, but it recounts a conversation that he had with one of the examining medical officers. As he was trying to go overseas, they said, hey, we know you're already in the reserves, and we want to call you up for active duty, but man, we can't send you overseas because you're so nearsighted. He said, with our luck, you would probably shoot at a general and you would miss him.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
wow. Wow. So that's funny.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's why
So
he couldn't open the bag of jelly beans.
probably.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So what he did throughout the duration of his active duty tour during the war was, he stayed stateside and ended up making training films for the Army Air Forces. So that's what he did as an active duty Air Force an active duty Army officer. And since the Air Force was still part of the Army at this point, he was transferred over to the Army Air Forces, where he served out the remainder of his tour. But he did that throughout the next 3 years, from 1942 to 45, and was even a participant in one of the war bond drives. And he was incredibly busy throughout that time. He made something to the effect of, I think it was like 400 training films. So if you take 400 training films, 400 training films over the course of only 3 years, he was a very busy man. He was not by any means idle throughout the war.
Oh, wow. I did not know that about him. Training films, it's not like we have YouTube editors,
No, but the only thing I remember about one film I saw him in that I can remember, I might have seen more, but he just woke up, he was in bed, and he was like, his legs were amputated for some reason. And he's like, Brandy, where's the rest of me? And he kept screaming that. And I was like, what? I don't know what that film was. Maybe Steve, you might know that.
It was King's Row.
No,
No,
I don't know.
Okay, did he just
I'm
get
not
King's
familiar
Row.
with that one. Usually with his films, like Mike had mentioned, King's Row and Newt Rockney, of course. He, was win one for the Gipper. Also, Bedtime for Bonzo. And Dark Victory with Betty Davis and Humphrey Bogart.
Okay.
And then, of course, his TV stints, and also becoming president of Screen Actors Guild.
Oh,
Yeah.
See, there you go. Yeah.
I'm going to have to research it now.
I know. It's like a whole other. Yeah.
Where's the rest of me? That's from King's Row.
Oh,
Yeah,
there
that's
you go.
what.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Go, Mike. Mike's got it. He's
Yeah,
got it.
I
because
was
that's
thinking that, but I was waiting for Mike to chime in.
no, but well, he did. But
Yeah.
no, that's the one film, that's the only film I've ever seen with Ronald Reagan in it. And that's the one thing I remember of it. I don't remember the rest of it. I just remembered that was such a scene. That was so gripping.
Why was he so big in Central California? I mean, even like when we a few years ago, he was. I mean, we were out in Central California. I think we were in San Benito County. We went to the fairgrounds, and they were getting ready for their county fair, and all the political booths had big cardboard cutouts of Ronald Reagan for people to vote Republican. Like everywhere you go in Central California, in the heartland, not necessarily on the coast, but that area, it's like, you better vote, according to Ronald Reagan, right? I mean, people I know love Ronald Reagan. And then I know his museum is down near Ventura area, but more on the inland side. So it's all the Central Valley, basically, San Joaquin Valley. What's going on with this? What happened there that he's made such a huge impact? Like, it's pretty interesting. I know Sacramento is close, but I mean, he just
him becoming governor of California, then becoming president of the United States.
he was loved. I mean, and still loved. I shouldn't say was.
you
he's
know,
still,
but when during World War II and such, he was actually a Democrat. He changed over to become a Republican.
Right.
During late 50s, early 60s, I believe.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's kind of interesting, because didn't Arnold Schwarzenegger do the opposite? Went from
Lots
Democrat
of
to
people did.
Republican.
Lots of people change parties if they don't like the leader of the party at the given moment that they're supposed to vote. And if you don't like,
I've done that.
I'm being very, I'm
okay. But now listen, this is very important. This is very, Mike, I know you're going to get like how cool this is. And I know you already know. Mr. T was in the military, right?
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Come on. Is that not the coolest? Like, come on. He was in the A team and he served in the military and he was a policeman. Come on. I love Mr. T. Don't you love the A team and Mr. T?
I pity the fool.
Yeah.
Come on.
No,
Exactly. Dude.
But he has the look. Like if you came into combat and he just looked at you, I'd be okay. Here's my gun. Bye.
No, he could scalp you.
All he'd have to do is put one of his gold chains around your neck and you'd go down.
No, he just looks at you and like he has a soft look, but he also has a hard look. And he'd look at you like, I will kill you and eat your feet. And I'm out of there.
Hey, and Bob Hope, we can't not talk about Bob Hope in the military, right?
Right, the USO.
Yeah. I mean,
he did really so much.
Yeah. And Mike, when you served, did you see any USO tours or any music tours come through while you were in service?
Not USO tours, but there were plenty of USOs that I stayed at. And those are like a beacon light anywhere you go. I mean, if there's a USO someplace, they will take you in. You can rest your head. You can get any number of free meals. And I have to tell you, the swankiest USO that I was ever at, and I don't know if it's still there. I would imagine it is. But the best USO that I ever stayed at was at the Seattle Tacoma Airport. Because and this particular USO, I don't know who was bankrolling the interior design for this particular one, but it was on par with like a 5-star resort. They had like mahogany wood paneling walls, and they had like these
wow, that's cool.
I mean, like these bunk bed cots that any number of soldiers could sleep in, and I'm just like, oh my God, I've never before or since seen a USO that was that well done. I mean, and they had like any variety of buffet item foods there. I'm like, oh my God, man, this is
you got heaven there.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I mean, my
that's
God,
awesome.
This is like better than the Plaza
It
and the
is.
Ritz. And, yeah.
Oh, that's
nice.
Cool. But you didn't get to have any music come in. That to me is the cool part. Like, you got to have the music, but you get good food. That's good. That's good. That's cool. Now, I got to go to Dennis France, NYPD Blue. Yeah, he went to combat in Vietnam, the 82nd Airborne. So he was in the Army. So when it's the 82nd Airborne, that means, is he flying off helicopters and going into combat? What happens when it says airborne?
So airborne means that he's a paratrooper.
Ooh, yeah. So he is a badass. Like, yeah. Wow. I would never have thought, like, you know what I mean? That he did that. But
I don't know. He's
really
got the same personality on TV. He's serious. Like, you don't mess with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Gene Wilder was a medic. This is incredible. Like, when you just look, so Vietnam, so we were talking really about a lot of World War II. There's some World War I, but Vietnam was also a big one too. And it looks like Kirk Douglas was pretty intense as well. Submarine chasers unit. What? Oh my God. What's a submarine chase? Oh, that's the name of the unit. But so he was in submarines? Wow. In World War II. Wow.
And he got injured and was then released in 1944.
Wow. I had no idea about that with him. And Leonard Nimoy, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently he was in there. I'm just like looking over these, but come on, Mike, tell us the story of Julia Childs, because she's a celebrity too, and she's been left off this big list. Well, I didn't see her in there. And Sammy Davis Jr., by the way, I think that's cool that people should know.
And even Don Rickles.
Don Rickles, like I can't imagine anybody telling Don Rickles what to do without him saying what to do back.
Can you imagine?
I can't imagine that. Like, could you? But
like,
I mean,
do this, and he'd be like, "What?"
No, it'd be like, oh, go whatever yourself. That's.
But then also, if he was like your sergeant or captain or major, oh boy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, George Jefferson, Sherman Hemsley from George Jefferson. He also joined the Air Force and served 4 years. So don't mess with George Jefferson. But still, Mike, tell everybody about Julia Childs, because no one believes me about her being a spy from World War II.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, here is an incredibly interesting story. One that I actually wrote about in a roundabout way when I made the Combat Diaries, because one of the veterans that was featured in that book actually served alongside her in the OSS. So the setup here is 1942. You have the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, which is the forerunner to the modern day CIA. And what I think gets underreported a lot in the popular history is that you had a big swath of the female population who wanted to join and serve in the war effort. Every branch of the armed forces had its own special core of all women volunteers. You had the Women's Army Corps, the WACs, you had the WASPs in the Army Air Force, you had the WAVES in the Navy, you had the SPARs in the Coast Guard, and then you also had the Marine Corps Women's Reserve, and a lot of Latter-day celebrities that themselves would end up serving in one of these units. B. Arthur from the Golden Girls, she was a Marine Corps reservist.
Wow.
And
she was a truck driver.
Wow.
That's cool. I'm glad you brought that up.
And so in the case of Julia Childs, what kept her from enlisting in any one of these women's organizations was actually her height. She was very tall for a woman. And she was nearly 6'2". And they said, well, hey, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but you're a little bit too tall for a lady. So there's really nothing that we can do for you. So instead, she joined the OSS. And then let's see, as it was shortly after she joined the OSS that she actually became one of the top assistants to the chief of the OSS himself, Wild Bill Donovan. Well, her organizational skills and her efficiency skills got the attention of Donovan to the point where he actually transferred her out to the Kunming station in China. And the China-Burma-India theater of World War II, very intense theater of operations, but it doesn't typically get as much press as either Europe or the Pacific. It tends to be one of the forgotten battlefronts of that conflict. Well, the OSS had a station in Kunming, and she was basically responsible for all of the clerical work, and that covered a very wide swath of daily operations at the OSS station, because she would organize all of the different high value targets. She would be able to she'd be able to pull up any information that any OSS operatives needed on like what bridge junction they needed to destroy, and she could tell you any bits and pieces of information about any piece of infrastructure. Say like, hey, if we need to send an OSS team to destroy this particular bridge, or if we need to sabotage this, if we need to sabotage this dam network, she could tell you how many people traveled over it per day. She could tell you what units were nearby. She could tell you who the command teams of the local nearby units were. She could tell you the location of the nearest Axis unit, the location of the nearest Allied spy network. I mean, she was a repository of information that they relied on quite heavily. And she actually met her future husband in the OSS over there.
Yeah, that's I come on, and then she's on TV throwing a chicken around, no,
Yeah,
with
but
a smile.
she still has that stern kind of "don't mess with me" look.
Yeah, but Steve, doesn't she remind you of Patricia Rutledge in a way?
Oh yeah.
There's a
Yeah,
similarity
like they
there.
could be sisters in a sense.
Yeah, because they both
Right.
sorry, that whole I went to okay, yeah, don't start me on that. I'll start singing it and nobody needs to hear it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting because we just don't hear their stories as much of women, out there doing stuff like that. And yeah, that shows like when we talk about actors and the connection between actors out in the field and war and military and out on stage. And then here she is. I mean, she did the stage and she had to cook in front of people in a timely manner. Like you had to get it right. And she didn't.
Well, yeah,
If
because those
she messed up, she
programs
didn't care.
then they were live.
Yeah. I mean, to be able to, she had to be prepared and know, like, have this prepared, and the chicken has to go for this amount of time. But she did drop things and just drank a little bit of wine. I mean, she had a stage presence, but was able to be silly and maintain that organizational skill that you're talking about,
Of
Mike.
course.
That was a cool balance of chaos management with good taste, but I think she threw herself into whatever she really wanted to do, she was amazing. One other person I wanted to bring up that people may not realize is that Jonathan Winters served, and he joined the Marines when he was 17 years old and served 2 years in the South Pacific. I mean, Jonathan Winters to me is a very fascinating person.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. And I had no idea he served either, I think we when you look at comedians use tragedy and make it into humor, right? And I think there's something to be said for that.
It's a way of dealing with it.
Yeah.
Not to make light of it. I don't think any comedian really wants to make light of war or things like that. They just handing you a way to soften the blow and heal with it. Just like deal with it.
Yeah.
But I could see where it could be offensive to a lot of people.
Speaking of Jonathan Winters, that also reminds me, Bob Newhart and Ken Berry, they also served in the military.
Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bob Newhart. Wow.
I know a dog that looks just like Bob Newhart.
Nancy's. Yeah. The Lion and the Rose bed and breakfast. Go look at their dog photos. Oreo, the dog, looks like Bob
You'll
Newhart.
see he looks just like Bob Newhart. He has the same expression. It just cracks me up.
Hey, John Amos was also. He was in what?
Roots.
Oh, a veteran of the he was a honorary master chief of the U.S. Coast Guard. Wow. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing how many people served. And I wonder about like learning, I mean, how to show up and do things. I think that the military teaches you things. What do you think about that, Mike, about learning from the military and applying that to your next career in life?
Well, I think that that's what a lot of veterans use to market themselves after they leave, because there are things that you get in the military that you really can't get anywhere else. Or if you do get them elsewhere, they're in areas and they're in venues and professions that very closely mimic the military lifestyle. There's really something to be said for not only the service ethic, but all of the things that you gain on a metaphysical level. All of the things, like team leadership and also project management, and just being in an environment where that has that kind of structure and that kind of discipline, and where you are expected at many times to improvise and find solutions to what people would normally think to be unsolvable problems. You know, when you take all of those things together and you market yourself forward, that's why that's why I know a lot of companies out there are very, very keen on hiring veterans. You know, they want someone who has that go-getter attitude, who you know, is able to think on their feet and able to improvise, and you know when to follow the rules and also know when to bend the rules.
Right.
So
And
can
Steve,
Mike,
doesn't
can I
that go
ask
to?
you,
Okay, go ahead.
I was just saying, Mike, can I ask you a personal question?
Okay.
Okay, and if you don't want to, no, if
Oh
you don't
my
want to
gosh,
answer,
like, oh,
hello. No, but if you don't want to answer, just say decline or whatever. What made you join?
Okay. Yeah, that's perfectly okay question. So
Okay.
there were a lot of things that made me want to join. One, I always had an interest in it. It was always something that I kind of gravitated towards. I always thought it was really cool. I thought it was something that had a certain appeal. And not only that, you know, aside from just the natural attraction that I had towards it, I also was inspired by patriotism. You know, I grew up with a very deep-seated love of country, and at some point I told myself, well, you know, I love America, but I really can't call myself a patriot in good conscience until I wear the uniform. So
Oh,
it was
wow.
that, and also just a deep-seated, I think, respect for what the generations before me had accomplished. Because I would read all these books on World War II, and I would
Yeah.
read about the sacrifices of our troops in Vietnam, and I was like, wow, you know, this is a very widespread collective brotherhood of people who have put service above self, and they've wanted to serve something that was bigger than any one of them were on an individual level. And that's really what inspired me to serve. And I said, well, you know, I don't know if I would do it forever. I don't know if I would make a career. If I don't know if I would make a career out of it, maybe I would, but I at least want to be able to say, hey, I served my country. I felt I had a debt to this country, and I paid that with my service.
wow.
And
And look at
thank
You
you
what
know,
you're
for that
still doing.
service, Mike.
Yeah,
yeah, and I
exactly.
so respect it. I just wanted, you know, I wanted to join the waves, and it came as a big shock to me when I attempted to do that, that as a male, you could join after the age of 17,
The
18.
military, not the waves.
Yeah, now, well, yeah, but the military armed forces, any branch of it. I found out that as a female, you can join without your parents' consent till you were over 25. Of course, I don't know if it's still that way, but it was that way when I tried to join, and I was shocked, you know, that there was that. And I still I hope they've changed that, but it's interesting though. You know, it's just history and what happens through time, but it's an interesting thing because I really wanted to go and serve, and I wasn't allowed without my parents' consent, and they wouldn't do that. So it's, you know, but for a guy, yeah, you can. And
But you
it's
know, Nancy, if I went, you know, you knew me in high school, I would have forged their signatures for you perfectly. I made
well,
money off of it.
yeah.
I was good at
Well,
it. Would have done a good
okay,
job for you.
Lisa, I'll remember that.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, if you knew me at that time and I knew you at that time, you know, but I would have taken care of it and you would have gotten into the waves. Maybe not. I don't know.
No, I just really wanted to do that. That was a really cool
Mm,
thing. And I just, yeah,
mm,
because I was like, okay,
yeah, it's
I've
fun.
done high school, I'm bored, and now I want to go do that. And I was shocked at the age of 25 as a woman, you could not
I
join.
think a lot
And
of that has changed now. A lot of
I
that has
hope
changed
so.
now. I mean, and you're seeing women in service that are kicking ass. I mean, they're just incredible women. You see
I
stories
really
about
dated myself there, probably.
yeah, who cares? You know, but I do want to go back to what I was going to ask Steve there. You know, what Mike was saying about being in the military, being able to, you know, listen in and then be able to you go under instruction, but then also know when to bend the rules. It really, and have that discipline, basically. And
Right.
when we look at these actors that we've been talking about, and then, folks like, B. Arthur, and talking about Julia Childs, I think that it's also goes with the creative arts, and whether you're performing visual musician, and when you aren't going in that kind of discipline, the arts can be deathly, actually, for many, and for all sides, military too is, but I think there's something about that discipline going on stage that made a lot of these men and women that we're talking about today successful, in that they had that discipline that kept them focused on their career. You know what I mean? Wouldn't you say that's the way? Like, if you lose your way in it's so hard I mean, I don't think it's gotten any easier to get ahead in Hollywood, unless you're a socialite kind of thing. But
or unless you have millions of dollars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, or you're born into it, etc. Which sometimes isn't the healthiest thing for you. But don't you think it's that kind of discipline probably rubbed off into their next career, as being on stage and on
Of course,
screen?
of course, because they have to have the discipline to hit their marks, to learn their lines, to be on time.
Right.
Yeah, I love
Like
it.
the stories you hear about musicians and actors, and they're always like, oh, they trashed this hotel, especially back in the 60s. They did this, they did that. And I'm like, well, how did they actually end up showing up for their performances?
Yeah,
And you have to take some of the press with a grain of salt, and some of it's true, a lot of it's not.
a lot of that did happen. They were doing a lot of drugs back then, in 60s and 70s,
Yeah, I
especially
know. Well,
70s was pretty
that's
drugs.
I just look at it as a big
And it was
gray.
PR. It was
It's
PR.
a-
Like Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles would check each other in hotels and under each other's names, and then trash hotel rooms so that they
It's
would blame
just
the
a
other band.
it's a big gray area, and
Yes.
everything was kind of a joke.
Somehow, I don't think military men and women did that in their hotel
No,
rooms. Right, Mike?
exactly.
I'm gonna be kind of right there, like, not on purpose, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't do it on purpose. I mean,
No,
stuff can go down with
military
anybody.
people you wouldn't get past that, but musicians and actors seem to get past a lot.
All right, so we got to wrap this up. This is a very
sorry.
cool conversation. No. I'm just going time wise here. We're doing good. Each of you, we've left off Elvis Presley. How about that? Like, isn't he a famous army veteran? Mike, would you say? Like, he's famously served in the military. Did he even see combat though? Like, or is he mostly in service?
Who?
Elvis. I don't know.
Elvis, yeah. So he served from 1958 to 60. So he was forward stationed in Germany along the Iron Curtain, but I never had any shots fired at him.
Okay. Well,
in the military.
No, we don't want him to.
Well, he
either,
went
but-
in.
Yeah, no, he went in. I mean, it's famous.
I don't think he had a choice.
No, and he did a lot. He was a truck driver prior to that, and was doing his music career, then served, and then came out, and so he's like it. He did a lot. But before we go, each of you, let's think about a movie that you think about, a military movie, maybe one of the actors or celebrities that we've talked about in it. So let's start with you, Steve. One of your favorite movies with either a military veteran or a military movie that you really enjoy, then you think people should watch.
The Best Years of Our Lives. It's about 3 military men who come home after serving.
I don't think we've seen that. What year? What time frame? Like,
that's 1946 with Frederick March, Dana Andrews, Myrna Loy, and Teresa Wright.
Oh, okay. I've not seen it. Not yet. Anyway.
But it won a Best Actor Oscar for Frederick March, his second one, and won Best Picture.
Mm. So what
And
about you, Mike?
supporting
Oh,
actor.
sorry. Oh,
Go ahead.
no. I didn't know there was another one after that. Ooh, very cool. Mike, what about you?
Well, one that comes to mind, and probably one that's a little bit beyond the mainstream, is there was that 1993 film that came out starring Wes Studi called Geronimo.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So it was the movie where Wes Studi is he is playing the title character of Geronimo in that film, and that's actually one of Matt Damon's first Hollywood appearances. Was a great film that was written by John Milius, who also did Red Dawn. But it stands out in my mind, not only as a good film of the Indian Wars of the American West, but Wes Studi himself was a Vietnam veteran. I mean, he's known for playing Native American roles throughout Hollywood. I mean, he was Magua in Last of the Mohicans, and also has done a string of very high profile films. But one of the most underrated sleeper hits, I think, of the early decade was that movie he did on Geronimo. And so it kind of takes two diametrically opposed parts of American history. You have the backdrop of the Vietnam War, as represented by that Vietnam veteran who's the main star of the film, and put it against the military operations of the American West as we were fighting the Native Americans out there.
Wow.
Good
And
pick. I
I
like
know.
that. Yeah,
I do
I
too.
want to see that. Excellent.
Well,
Mike.
I've got to go to Nancy, but there's also a movie that we've got to bring up. We Were Soldiers Once. Hello? That was the book, but When We Were Soldiers, come on, We Were Soldiers. Let me get this straight, because there's so much about Hal Moore, and everybody, you need to go and watch that movie, and also get Mike Guardia's books about Hal Moore. If you go to MikeGuardia.com, just saying, I have to bring Hal Moore into this. I can't not bring him in, because he was also, part of that, and he helped with that, didn't he? Him and his wife helped in that movie, and they have director's chairs in the museum in Bardstown, Kentucky, that we saw. So I just want to bring them up. But yeah, I mean, I think We Were Soldiers. That is, I remember Nancy and I saw it, a year or 2 years ago, Nancy? And we're like, yeah, that's him. that's I mean, it's not him, but you know what I mean? We're watching, I know it's Mel Gibson, but it was just, after all the years talking about Hal Moore, going to the museum, reading your books, finally seeing the movie. It was like everybody knows the movie, then no, this was, it was epic. That was cool to watch. But Nancy, who are you picking?
I had to think about this. I like Midway. There's something about that film that made me think about how insular people can get without thinking that there's a world around them. They're only thinking about their town where they are. And I don't know, somehow Midway made me think of more than that. And I think, sometimes we get so into our own lives, we forget that everything around us impacts us. And that's a film that shows impact to your life, whether you want it or not, and whether you think about it or not. And it comes as a big shock to a lot of people, because we're so into our own lives and we don't realize that we're connected to everything else around us. And that's where we fall into trouble. That's my personal opinion, like it or not. But I just feel like we forget the connection between us and everything else. And so sometimes I think it's good to be self-centered, to promote yourself, better yourself. Promote's not the right word, but better yourself, educate yourself. But you have to understand you're not the only person, and that you're related to everything else, like climate change, everything that's happening on Earth. You have to realize that at some point it's going to kick you in the butt if you don't realize that it's there.
Okay.
It'll come as a shock instead of you preparing for it. I like to be prepared.
Well, I think the important thing of Midway too is that it's got Dennis Quaid in it, and he's cute.
Oh, well, yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, but it's a good film.
No, I want to give a shout out to a film that touched me in the 80s, late 80s. It was a 1989 movie, and then I watched it again like about 5, 6, 7 years ago. Now I needed to watch it again. Glory. Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, Matthew Broderick.
Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
He was brilliant. Denzel was brilliant in there.
I mean, Denzel is always brilliant. He's like the perfect, like he's just a person of like, dude, he is like perfection, like really in all his movies and everything he is. But like that movie to me showed history in a different way.
You bet.
I mean, Matthew Broderick's like, come on, I'm going to leave these black men into war. Like, so, have you seen this, Mike, Glory?
I have.
Did you like it? Or is it accurate? It is a true story, right? It's based on it, I should say.
Yeah, it's based on it. I mean, I think it's a very interesting take on the Civil War and, the foundations of how we improve race relations over time.
Yeah. Well, doesn't that just go back to the War of 1812 with Andrew Jackson bringing all the Native Americans in? How did that happen? Right.
Yeah.
Oh, we're out of time. We got to go. All right. So everyone, MikeGuardia.com. Keep up with Steve Schneickert on our Big Blend or on our site blendradioandtv.com. Just type in Hollywood History. You'll find him there with his amazing Hollywood History segments. Mike Guardia is here every first Monday. And thank you both for joining us, talking about Hollywood history and Hollywood history tied to military service. Thank you all. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.